Hello, I'm Toycat, and NATO Article 5 guarantees that if any piece of territory in blue is attacked, then every other country in NATO must defend it. The idea of starting a war with 30 countries is a really bad idea, and so NATO Article 5 has never been invoked. By the way, this is an older map that doesn't include Finland and Sweden, but it does show that Algeria, Cyprus, and the Bahamas used to be under NATO protection, but no longer are, and of course the fact that Hawaii, French Guiana, and the UK's Caribbean territories also would not be defended because there is a geographic bounding box on where NATO would respond, but this NATO response is why Russia probably doesn't want to start a traditional war, which is why Putin's secret weapon is not starting any traditional war. I want to talk about this today, but first it's important to talk about the idea that even though the US is the only country that has actually triggered Article 5, more and more European countries are starting to look at this agreement and wonder, would the US actually come to our aid if there was a war in Estonia, or a war in Poland, or a war in Romania? Were there to be an invasion by that one big country to the east, would the US actually jump on board, or would they start asking for minerals or something along those lines? Indeed, France has had a big discussion with the US, and right afterwards there was a huge offer of what they're calling a nuclear shield to Europe. As you're probably familiar, there are three nuclear-powered officially armed states within NATO, France, the UK, and the US, and if you conclude that the US is obviously going to be doing their own thing potentially sometimes, and if you conclude that the UK is outside of the EU, as a European Union member, you might feel at least a little bit safer because France, also an EU member, does also have these, and France is kind of using this attitude to basically say that, yeah, even though a lot of EU states such as Germany and Italy are directly protected by US nuclear weapons, if you're worried about, if you want to have this nuclear deterrence without having to rely on what is sometimes a questionable ally, that proves that they're willing to bounce around all the time, then have you considered relying on us? And so a lot of the US has military bases all over Europe, but also active nukes. And what if these active nukes were replaced by, say, French ones? This is an idea that could be both useful for the US, which is obviously making its goal clear of getting out of Europe as much as they can, while also making clear that, yeah, actually this could be a great way to defend the Union as a whole and to build up its strength. This is something which is really interesting and probably does double down on the idea that even if you are a madman, we always like to pretend that people who lead countries that do things we disagree with are mad and insane and have, they're kooky, who knows what they're up to. But the truth is, the only people who actually, I think the only time you can say this is true is with North Korea, and even then it's not that it is true, it's that it's in North Korea's leaders' interest to look like it's true so that we can give them stuff by being like, oh god, they might fire anything anytime, they might just randomly bomb Seoul. If we want to prevent a massive loss of life, we'd better give this guy some money, and this has been basic tactic. But every other leader in the world is not trying to look insane, and probably isn't insane, and so what does Russia actually want? Well, I mean, the easiest thing to say is like their sphere of influence back. They would very much like it if Kazakhstan, the Caucasus, and their former USSR territories were playing by their rules, and so when we take some of those territories, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and we say they're full EU members with the euro, we say they're fully defended by NATO, I think Russia gets a little bit upset by that. And so what can they do if they really want to show we could hurt you guys, but they are prevented by an agreement from hurting those guys without hurting not just themselves, but also like the entire world? What can they do in that case? The simple answer is effectively grey warfare. Finland has, the Finland Coast Guard has noticed there's been lots of weird boats that are in what is called Russia's Shadow Fleet. Russian registered ships are obviously going to have some issues, so Russia registers some ships across the world and effectively can take advantage of the fact that these are effectively Cook Island ships, and if those Cook Island ships happen to drag their anchor along the surface of the ocean, the seabed, opposite of the surface, the seabed, and that happens to destroy a cable, that's a wild coincidence that, we happen to pay those people to do those things. What a sad and crazy incident that leads to a damaged undersea cable. There are all sorts of undersea cables in the region of the Baltic that are mysteriously getting severed. I think the West is quite worried, rightfully so, that this grey zone warfare or sub-threshold warfare warfare is basically trying to carry out attacks that are entirely deniable, not officially by them, but are deliberately trying to damage, in this case, the infrastructure of the West. This is something that hasn't just occurred in the Baltic, by the way, multiple times in the Baltics. It's not just the one undersea cable, but also this one too. A tanker carrying Russian gasoline, cutting an undersea power connector too. So all sorts of cables in this international zone, which have all functioned because of just the idea that who's going to destroy infrastructure. Like that would be very, very illegal. But instead, these hybrid warfare attacks are happening in all sorts of places. The biggest and most famous example is probably the fact that Russia spends money that used to be best spent on like espionage and foreign relations and I don't know, think CIA stuff, right? Like money that could have been spent like interfering with foreign countries before is now best spent on just having an internet division that can go online. Because people talk about Russian disinformation to say like things I don't like all the time. But actually, yeah, if you want to move your enemies, the beautiful thing about your enemies being a democratic country is all you have to do is be able to say things in their democracy and you can shift their views maybe slightly in the way that you like. Imagine there are only two parties standing, one of which is, I don't know, like pro-low taxes and pro-Russia, and one of which is pro-higher taxes and anti-Russia or whatever, just to keep things simple. There's a trillion policy positions. Then if you are just advocating for lower taxes, you probably, assuming that the other party doesn't shift over, you're also helping your own interests. But then imagine you could go steps even further and help with, in like a six-party political system, you could probably find a party that's probably super pro your interests, and giving them money or supporting their cause indirectly would, at the best case scenario, help your country's relation with, say, Germany or whatever else, or Austria perhaps. Or, worst case scenario, you mess around with their society, you cause division, and you weaken their democracy. This is the genius move that Russia has. They can't start a war with most of their neighbors that they would like to, and so what do you do instead? You make it very tricky for their life. You can get all the concessions that you would get out of being able to start a war, except instead of saying, we will start a war, you say, we might cause some problems. I mean, they're never going to actually officially threaten them. Russia just sends their fleet. In the UK, for example, they sent the Russian surveillance ship, the Yantar, just to go loiter over some UK critical undersea infrastructure. We're just sending it to hang out in international waters. Who's to say what it's doing there? We're just hanging out. And so ultimately, the whole global network of undersea cables and pipes, which are built on trust, are now probably fair game. And so I think the point I'm trying to make with this video is threefold. One is, if you're curious about the Ukraine situation, it looks like there is this continuous oh yeah, is the US really going to do this? And the US looks like they are continuously saying yes. Ukraine is saying they don't want to sign a deal that 10 generations of Ukrainians will have to pay back, because they're asking for 500 billion, obviously not expecting to get that much, but 500 billion is literally 3 times the Ukrainian GDP. They're asking for 100% of the wealth in Ukraine 3 times over. So in reality, that's probably a big push where you can ask for like 0.1% of that to be paid per year and then not index it to inflation so it effectively goes down. There's a lot of weird ways you could like mess with a deal there. But my point is to say that the Ukraine situation is one where, by not being outside of NATO, Ukraine has, suffered extreme losses, right? And so how does the West respond to direct warfare? And how does the West respond to indirect warfare? And the answer is, I think we are really struggling. I'm gonna come and say something that might make you call me Russian disinformation, but I think that we used to have a world where the US and Europe were pretty united on most security issues. I think France has always found themselves to have issues with US foreign policy, but in general, Europe and the United States all agreed that Russian aggression and peace in Europe, lack of Russian aggression and peace in Europe are broadly worthwhile goals, because something like 2/3 of the world economy happens over here, and so if you can keep that economy safe, you'll keep that economy growing for everyone, even if it's just so that you can have better trading partners on either side of the Atlantic. And so now that agreement is seemingly coming to an end, I think that the US is more and more saying like, why are we helping you? Do you want to put your military bases in our country? I think they should ask. I think we should offer that, by the way, but I'll leave my trolling to the side for now. I think that the more serious point is that as the US and Europe start to become two separate blocks, Europe becomes weaker to Russia, as Russia has to not just has to grapple not with the entirety of the Atlantic region, but just with Europe, and even within Europe, just with you know, like 70% of European countries. Russia starts to see more and more options, and so I think the easiest solution, the world, you know, my hippie equivalent to we should all just get along, is if we could somehow get Russia within the Western order again. Wouldn't things be nice? The first president of Russia was entirely down with that. If there was just some way that we could convince Russia that, yeah, okay, you can have your own little sphere of influence over there, but in exchange, no warfare, no directly invading your neighbors, no digging up undersea cables that you're not meant to, or deliberately threatening to do that to other countries. If it wouldn't, I don't know, this is the, you know, I guess the hippie inside of me that's like, wouldn't it be cool if hundreds of thousands of people didn't have to go to war solely so that we could avoid having to work out exactly what the terms of peace are? And the answer is, yeah, it would be cool, but it's not going to happen, I guess. And that is the update for your news today. This is why Germany has a big decision ahead of it. Does Germany push to mend the transatlantic alliance, or does Germany push to work out what does it mean for Europe? You know, what does it mean, really, for us as a continent to work out how stuff like this works without the United States? And, yeah, ultimately, what relationship does that lead to the US with as a whole? Also, this is, again, a very awkward position for the UK to be in. Ideally, you know, like, while the transatlantic alliance falls apart, the UK's here in the middle, like, can you guys just get along? Can you guys just both get along with each other, and ideally also get along with us? You could argue it's probably good that, like, oh yeah, well, if the US falls out with Europe, they're probably less likely to fall out with the UK, and vice versa, as Europe falls out with the United States. I feel like they start to appreciate us a lot more. But I also think, like, wouldn't it be nice if we could just go back? You know, this is a sentiment I think everyone thinks. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just go back to the way things were when I was a kid? Wouldn't it be great if we could just go back to that Cold War optimism of, oh, you know, Russia's in the Western world order now, and, like, you know, they're in exchange for a few questionable things every year, we agree that that's just fine and that's just great. And you know, one day we even move towards a world where Russia could be a member of the EU, and Russia maybe even a member of, but no, we have moved away from that. And is that for the better? My genuine take is no. But in the meantime, I don't think we're going to. I think people who are, like, predicting a huge major war are probably about 20 years too early, I would suspect. You know, like, give it 15, 20 years and keep escalating the whole time, and yeah, we're probably on the brink of, you know, maybe thermonuclear destruction. But right now, I think we're just slowly getting ourselves closer to the point where that becomes a possibility, and that's disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, which thumbnail did you get for this video? I've got 3 of them here, and I want to know which thumbnail you got, but also which one you think is best. So I've got just Russia on the map here. Then we've got Russia on the map doing its fun little eyes with text on. We'll see if text hurts or helps the thumbnail. Then we've got Russia on the map with text, with a picture of your boy. Place your bets, I guess, and I'll let you know via the community tab. I think it takes a few days for the results to be known. And so yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. I'm about to go to Canada now, by the way. So yeah, if you live in this weird empty bit of Canada here, let me know what there is. I think it's Calabogie I'm going. Is it Calabogie? It's a fun name, so I hope I'm going to Calabogie. So yeah, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Or maybe I won't. Yeah, so the daily videos will have a little bit of a pause, and I'll have a couple of filler ones for the week. There's a lot of fun things to talk about, though, so hope you're looking forward to it, because I'll see you there. Bye.